Good day to you all. This is Tinashe Mugabe, the DNA Man. So, a program that is actually an initiative in trying to address the overriding themes that are sprouting out of the DNA shows that we have been tackling all along. So, we have a delegation from different organizations that are going to help me to unpack this topic so that the grainy detail of what's related regarding these topics are exhumed vividly, and also maybe a platform for you to learn. So our topic today is going to be early child marriages versus the law. So we are going to take an exploration into this topic. But maybe before we look into this topic, let me maybe allude to my counterparts so that maybe they can introduce themselves to you. So I'll start from my far end. Ma'am, can you please introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Cynthia Chiwanjire. I'm currently the family therapist and counselor for DNA. The DNA organization.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Tinashe Anderson Maburu. I'm a National Protection Coordinator, a social worker by profession, as well as a mental health and child protection advocate.
I'm glad to meet my namesake in the house. Pleased to meet you, sir. Okay, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Mugabe.
Okay.
I'm Miss Loveness Mainato, the founder and executive director of the Albino Charity Organization of Zimbabwe.
All right. Thank you so much, ma'am. You're welcome. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. My name is Farai Museta. I'm a legal practitioner by profession from Madzima Chichikausiku Museta Legal Practitioners, and I'm a partner at the firm.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And you, ma'am?
My name is Tarido Michelle Muzua, and I am a TV producer and presenter.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'd like to ask you to feel comfortable as we take an exploration into this topic. I believe that you have all watched different shows, episodes regarding DNA, and so many issues are sprouting, and there's been an outcry all over our platforms, be it on Facebook, on YouTube, and many platforms. People have been actually crying to say, why don't you look at child abuse? Why don't you look at early child marriages as a topic and really, give comments regarding these issues? So we decided to separate it from the main DNA show so that we can actually sit, relax, and look into these themes, so that maybe the people out there can learn a lot out of our discussion. So just feel free to express your expertise, knowledge, sentiments, notions regarding this topic that we have today. So before we look into this topic, we need now to allude to the clips that were deduced from the earlier shows that we aired. So let's have a look at this.
15 years.
15 years.
Now matatango famzana naye.
Okay.
Tafamzana nuva advent dorani vandenda nemba kwedu.
Bachi?
Ndibaurani.
Okay.
Vandenda nemba kwedu. Vanandra na spare yangu. Leo nisikana ndetamba naye. Iya veni mkumana wefamba naye.
Okay.
Nonze. Dan nisikana ndetamba naye. Instead na tapina spare. Wakumana yangu harimo. Ineni nkumana wangu patara pasi ni mpomono boyfriend yangu. Nkumana wake varra pasi pandendisa modzo kutangana wenda ana kuti kunchira china andina. Wechitiriwa mana kuvunza umone pombe papondala ndeko kombuja mbokwini saka nosomborani nkumana unotose unoenda uchazoenda kana unogona takana senga 6 months tati akawanika akapamundo zvada kuitika sika yapa 4 pananza kuti muduma mani chino sanza anti mbazo wazo akauzwa na mama tikanodzwa na gogo tikazoya kunuko tenda kunkumana akambotanga achiramba kazobvumwa kuti chokwa ndingaita senda kanorarako pandakapona mwana ndakafona kuti sipe mwana vengotora iti unyarara.
Okay.
Amungu atoita chipo chemwite cho chingotora iti right. Ati azvinetse ninge ndise ndende koko. Ndinogirisa mwana. Ndaya kunoku muswa wa January. Ndasvika ndatosvika sipo zvaro rudo. Pandatsana ngukurira. Uba nditikaso uchadzoke ndakati ndodzokera ku. Batagara asi mubatiro wacho vainditawo.
Vaikubata isei.
Kuchungurudzi noti ndaite dzimongwana muzoti mutengoro kana paint zvaka. Ndozoti ana mari yanenge anayo. Ndosandenda kuna didi wangu. Baba ndokumbura mari paint radambuka undipawo mari.
Okay.
Ndotenga mwana ashapamba. Ndinodzawo baba. Uchingodaro uchingodzawo baba wangu. Noti ndandaona kuti nyangu ndakamudza chipe. Ndichazotanga kutengera zvinhu kana madini yabuda.
Nyari kunetsa iye akuramba kuenda musha kwedu. Ana baba vangu nana gogo vangu mwana vamizivi.
Okay.
Nopane munhu iri kunyetse pamba. Iye aduke ndeko. Aminochi.
Okay, mama, pindrai.
Chenda sauti ndiendeka. Naona nimbatwa wachino vaindita kunuko. Ndakati wati mondienda kufinisi. Nyangu ndakashungurudzwa ndiri kuko mari yebhazi ndiwanepi. Hakuna ndomboiwana. Mashoko ndakamudza. Ndakatonotora mwana wako muenda kufinisi. Ini kufinisa kusumusha kwedu. Ini ndidongo ndoda kumusha kwedu anonditora vendani. Iwo ndozvonokuita ungotora babiri pomberi omuenda mucha kwenyu. Zvandakamudza.
Mairo were pamba pachwana.
Patonimutswa akatofondwa pamba.
Ani manje.
Baba.
All right, yeah. So this is the clip that I earlier indicated. So as you have all witnessed, indeed, this theme of early child marriage is prevalent in most of the episodes. So we are now taking a look into these issues deeply so that we really have got to paint and portray what's really transparent, what's really apparent, what's on the ground regarding these issues. So maybe let me start with our lawyer here, maybe to give us a definition of what child marriage is all about.
Thank
you.
From
a legal perspective.
All right, Mr. Mkebe, I'll do my best to try and simplify.
Yeah, sure, yes.
Typically, child marriage is something that's considered a marriage, whether customary or otherwise, with a minor. This is a person typically termed to be under the age of 18.
Okay.
So recently, there's been the New Marriages Act, which actually has clearly defined the parameters of what is the right age for two people to be married, which is at the age of 18.
Okay.
So it has become illegal for anyone to marry anyone who's under the age of 18, whether it's both of them or it's an adult with a minor. It has become criminalized, so it is actually a criminal offense if you do marry anyone under the age of 18. So whether it's customarily or in terms of civil marriage. So all forms of marriage in that manner are considered illegal.
All right.
Yes.
To what extent is this law being enforced, like in our setup here in Zimbabwe?
Well, typically what tends to happen, it's I wouldn't say it's an issue of enforcement,
okay,
because it's not like the police go from village to village, house to house,
okay,
saying, okay, what's the name, how old is your wife, how old is your husband, typical situation.
Okay.
These issues only crop up once an issue arises. For
Okay.
example, an instance of abuse or the issue of rape, or someone reports that, no, I'm aware that my neighbor has married a minor. And then as a confidential informant maybe goes to the police, puts a note in the suggestion box at the police station, and then the police then investigate from there. So you find that once that is arisen, there are cases that are taken to court for purposes of being prosecuted.
Okay.
All right. So the issue of enforcement really depends now on the community and the people involved in the issue and those who become aware of it. It's essentially the role of the public to disclose these issues if they come across them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderfully explained. Thank you so much. Now, I'd like to move on to my namesake. Any comment regarding this topic that we're having today? Child marriages versus the law.
I think it is very important for us to have such a conversation, because looking at the statistics, we can realize that it is said more than 30% of girls are married before they reach the age of 18. So you can actually see that it's actually a topical issue, an issue that is affecting members of the community, that is affecting even the children. Because if you look at someone being taken into a marriage at an early stage, this means that the life would be affected. This means even if the person was going to school, the dynamics will change, because the person will have to focus on the marriage.
Kuchikoro ndo kwakazvakatanga kubuda. Zvatanga kubuda, mama wangu vazozviziva.
Okay.
Mama wangu vazviziva, wangu vasingade kuti ndiuye kuno. Like my parents angu ese, vangu vasingatodi kuti ndiuye. Vavati chiande kunoitesta. Tunoti ine mamanzi mangani. But again anoitesta, yange yakutopinda mu 3 months.
Okay.
Yangu nopinda mu 3 months, ivo vavandibvunza kuti uda kuenda here kana usikoda. Ini ndatombotanga ndati handisi kuda. But the fact yekuti ndizogara ndine nhumbu, mwana wacho ndozomuchengeterwa nani. Vanangoti handei.
Okay.
Of which ipapo nandiri form 3.
Okay.
and ndaifunga zvekuti kuchikoro ndozodii in the other stuff ndaifanira and handine future yangu yandaitarisirawo.
Okay.
Vavandiunza.
So if we talk about it more, if we enlighten the nation about the challenges that are associated with it, I believe it can go a long way in addressing the challenges that young people are facing in the country.
Okay. Wonderfully needed. Thank you so much, Say. Okay, now let's move to you, ma'am. What do you have to say about this topic? What are your sentiments regarding this topic?
Okay, if I can start from the video that we have just watched.
Yes, you're allowed.
As far as I have seen it, the early child marriage, at times, it is a marriage of convenience. Because if I got it well, it is the girl who asked the boy to come to her parents' home. And the girl alluded that she really liked having sexual intercourse with this boy. So, as we can see, we cannot say this young lady was raped. Instead, she invited the boy. And the boy ended up marrying her because of inconvenience. We have to look both sides.
Okay.
Even the boy child is being forced into marriage as well at an early age. Because this young man didn't have it in mind that he is ready to marry this girl. But he ended up into the marriage because of the possible outcomes. All the same, we are totally against the idea of early child marriages.
All right. Thank you so much, ma'am. All right. Maybe let's hear from the TV producer has got to say regarding the same topic. You can go ahead.
All right. So recently, I was filming something at Mount Hopton, and it's like a shrine. I don't know the environment and how it is, and I saw how those kids are. They're so quick to having children. They're so quick to having sexual intercourse. So I feel like we should really instill it into schools about how doing those things are wrong.
Maybe others, what do you think? Maybe I come to my namesake here.
There is one thing that I also feel has been pushing this for far too long. That's the issue of religion. I think there was a shrine that was being talked about. There are some religious institutions that spearhead the issue of early marriages. So you can see that there are quite a number of factors that are contributing. Others include poverty, someone having sexual intercourse with another one because they want to survive, and then later on they fell pregnant and they end up in a marriage. So you can see it's a combination of many factors, but the most contributing factor is that social media and difficult times have washed away the fiber of parenthood that we used to have, and the society has also become too selfish to an extent that we no longer have that ubuntu. If I see Tinashe Mugabe's child doing something that is not right, I cease to care because one or Tinashe.
Okay, yes.
But then back then they used to take care of a child together as a collective.
Okay.
A valid point indeed. Yes.
Okay, I've been listening to all that's been said.
Yes.
Our lawyer indicated about child marriages and how the law takes it in. And we think about law and then we look at our own cultural aspects of how our behaviors are. We might say social media is to blame for a lot of things, but when you look at our cultural background, what does it say about the girl child? It says a girl child by the age of 13 was able to become a mom, should be used to exchange for products. Maybe a rich family would buy a child, and this was in exchange for maybe cows, maybe goats. And when we look at the age group of that child, it was 13 years and above. So yes, we can say social media, but also our own cultural aspects. So we also coming out of a background where we need to have awareness programs where we cannot incarcerate someone because this is what they've learned. This is the behavior we've had as a community. We are taking maybe the Eurocentric ideas of how we should behave, but have we come out of our own behavioral system? So it's a lot of things.
Yeah.
And also economic factor. A girl child cannot be sustained in her family because they can't afford to, so they decide to do as well.
That's outstanding indeed.
Yeah.
All right, I think for now we need to take a short break. So we'll bounce back as the topic is getting hotter and more is coming out. So we'll be bouncing back shortly.
Looking for hassle-free property buying, selling or renting? Hannah Properties has got you covered wherever you are. Our expert team offers a range of services including property sales, management, development, construction, project supervision and more. We deal in residential, commercial and industrial properties and provide legal document preparation services with expert lawyers, saving you time and money while ensuring a safe and secure legal transaction. So why wait? Get in touch with us today.
Welcome back. Yeah, indeed, our topic is getting hotter and juicier at the same time. But there's been a point highlighted earlier before we took a break. I think it was about the education system in relation to early child marriages. So let me just direct it over to you, Ma'am. What's your comment? What's your sentiment regarding our education system and early child marriages?
Mr. Gabe, I wanted to say, in as much as we are supporting the new curriculum, the new system, at the same time we have the negative side of it, that it's affecting our children much because they are learning about sexual intercourse and other developments at a very tender age. You can imagine a grade 4 pupil telling you everything about your body. And ndakambonzwa kamwe kakutoti imi mainyepa kuti mwana anotengwa kuhospital munotorora mese nati then pobva paita mwana. And I got shocked.
Okay, so is it because of the education that they're getting from school that's leading them to such behaviors?
At some point I can say yes, because during the ancient times, pamazuva edu isusu tembere tichiri at primary level, we have never been taught about that. And at home it was a taboo being heard talking about the body parts and the sexual intercourse and the like. We were not exposed to that. And I can tell you, at Form 2, I used to run away from boys.
Okay. What were you running away from?
Because a boy could told me that he loves me.
Okay. Then you ran away.
Then I headed home to tell my mom.
Okay.
But these days, because of the education system, because of the internet, social media, you find that our very young children, they are saying hi to a guy. And even they have the guts to tell a guy that I have a crush on you. You know? So it's leading to higher levels, higher risks of early child marriages. It's now, like you said, the law versus early child marriages. Actually, I do not understand what it is saying, because you find that if our children are victims to the perpetrators, if you get to the courts, you will be shocked with some of the outcome, the results. You'll be told that the judgments, that no, these children, they were in love, they know each other. A 12-year-old daughter, a 12-year-old girl, or 13, said to be in love with a man. I'm talking this from personal experience. It's a case that I know, that I really know, of a close relative, that a 23-year-old man was said to be in love with a 13-year-old girl. And he impregnated the girl, and then the law said they were in love.
Yes, that's a very good question. In fact, it's a peculiar case you've mentioned. I've never come across a situation where someone will actually get away with that. The law as it stands actually creates two penalties or two types of situations where you can be found guilty of rape. There is statutory rape, where you have intercourse with a minor. The reason why it's called statutory rape is because the minor child had consented, right, had agreed to that intercourse with of course, the person who's above the age of majority, above the age of 18. Right. This is not to say that that was a good or bad thing. Now, the issue that the court does take into consideration issues like rebuttable presumption of being in a, how can I say, in a mature state to be able to give consent. However, under the age of 18, you're considered a minor. So if you can, even if they come to court and say we're in love, we had courted each other, or she was the one who approached him, so on and so forth, it's still a case of statutory rape, of which he will be then, what's it called, feel the full brunt of the law, right? Whether or not now, the nature of the penalty is going to be quite severe will depend now on the circumstances of the case. So maybe that's where you had raised issue to say no, they were in love, they were together, she was agreeable. Such things may affect sentencing. However, he will be found guilty of statutory rape in that situation because it doesn't seem like they were both denying. They're essentially pleading guilty that it did happen.
Ndine 15 years. Eh.
Alright.
First day rakango rara nini ndo rakabva ngoti auna kuita sei auna kwaunoenda because nandiri mudiki.
Okay.
Nandiri mudiki. Ndakatombosungwa achinzi under age but ndakatoenda futi kumbare kukoti ndakati mufesi wangu ndomuda akati anondichengeta because ini ndakura mai vangu vafa ne3 years. Baba vangu nasingatoziva kuti vari kupi. So ndakachengetwa nagogo mai vamai ndo vakandichengeta. Saka ndaingofunga kuti kana ndine nhumbu ndakazoenda futi kumusha kuguruve voti kundichengeta kwavakaita voti futi kuchengeta mwana wangu saka rege ndimbomumirira aite sei abude sezvo ati anondida anondichengeta. Ndo zvakaitika.
Right, so there's statutory rape, and then there's of course a rape where there is no form of consent, whether it's a minor or an adult, where someone then forces intercourse with a person who's not willing to engage in that intercourse with that person. So typically those cases where someone is said, no, they are both in love, they should go scot-free, that is an anomaly. In fact, if anything, I would recommend that you bring that issue to the attention of the superiors in those courts for it to be addressed, because that's irregular, very irregular, that the court would dismiss a matter on the basis that these two parties, a minor and a major, were actually in love, and that's the basis of a dismissal. No, that's typically doesn't happen in our courts.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much for the wonderful explanation.
Yeah.
Okay, so I heard earlier that there was an issue that was raised to say it seems like today the law is floating over reality. There's a great discrepancy between what the law is trying to address versus what is on the ground. In as far as the cultural issues are concerned and the general reality on the ground is anything to go by. What do you have to say about that? What are your general comments regarding this issue?
Yeah, that's a very good point. In fact, I'd like to give my personal opinion on the issue.
All right.
All right. Typically, if you look at the laws that make up the legal framework of our countries, they are typically Western principles, drawn from Western morals, so on and so forth. Yes, of course, there are aspects where our customary law positions are adopted into acts of parliament. But we have a situation where, especially when it comes to these type of issues, especially social issues, we tend to legislate based on international standards, right? So if the international community is saying this is an offense, we tend to adopt that position, regardless of our traditions, our norms, what is actually happening on the ground. Because this raises an important aspect. We have minors having early intercourse, right? And then you have child marriages, right? There is what people may not talk about as much, but they are young children getting pregnant, not getting married, but having children at a very young age. And it never comes into the realm of marriage. So no one is talking about child marriages in those situations. But you have a situation where you're talking about child marriages, where you're looking at communities who say, okay, if you have faulted and you have had intercourse at a young age and a child arises, you have no choice but to marry.
tese taiva vana vechikoro.
Vamatora vana chikoro. Asi makadana 1 month. Alright. Inda makakunya kurumidza.
Nyangoti pafambidzana kwandakanga ndichiita nemukomana wangu. Vabereki pavakangozviona, pavakangoziva. Vakabva vangonditi enda munhu wako.
Okay, chii chaitika?
Ndobva ndatongotizira.
Chii chaitika?
Ngangoti takaonekwa takamira tese.
Okay.
Musango.
Okay.
Ndingangoti namai ndobva vangonditi mwanangu enda nemunhu wanga wainaye.
Okay. Mai venyu. All right.
You see, so you have a situation where the customary and traditional norms create some sort, I wouldn't call it a penalty, but it's almost like a consequence of you having done that. You must now marry, forcing those two, whether they are young children, to solemnize their union and actually form a family as a consequence of their conduct. Now, you find that for us, we have jumped a few steps in a different direction. I wouldn't say above or below, because that would give us the impression that our traditional norms are somehow inferior.
Yes,
no, but we've jumped in a different direction and indicated that, okay, if two minor children have solemnized some kind of a marriage, it is illegal. I understand the premise behind that. I understand the reasoning behind it. I understand the mischief is trying to fix. But the issue is that you're right. Our law has not somehow evolved to accommodate our traditional norms and practices. Because as we were speaking earlier, the majority of our Zimbabwean population is in the rural areas, which means a lot of these practices are typically going to be found in those areas. It's rare to hear that in town. Of course, there are situations in urban areas where you find that a child has been married off to the neighbor who's a 30, 40-year-old person. But in the rural areas, it's typically normal. You'll find that the girl child who's been married off, it happened to her mother, it happened to her sisters, it happened to her aunties, it happened to her grandmother. You know, so it's nothing unusual. So here we have a situation where the law is saying something must be done.
Okay.
There's an illegal action.
Yes.
But then you have the parties who are involved in it. We have absolutely no problem with what's going on. Right? So the issue then is to say, okay, is it an issue of educating the masses? Or is it a traditional issue that we then need to adapt to this new way of thinking? Or do we simply just enforce the law regardless and people are forced to accept it? Of course, the reality on the ground is that the law won't change.
Yes.
Right. So which means it's going to persist. People are going to be enforcing it whenever the situation arises. Right. So which means people will adopt, not by, how can I say, not by consent, if I can use that word. They're going to be forced to say it's illegal. You will go to jail if you do it. But you find that it's going to take time for that to get into the conscience of people, and it to be generations until it's considered taboo for you to do that. Right now, I don't think it's seen as a major problem. That's why you find no one reports these issues, because it's not abnormal to them, you understand. That's why even the child itself, even if they're being abused, they're coming from a situation where that's how a husband treats his wife. So you can't tell her that it's abuse. She doesn't understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, true.
You understand?
Yes,
of course, there are those situations. Then there are situations, as like the video, where this child, the girl child, seemed to be quite street smart. She was aware that she enjoyed intimacy, and she wanted to keep doing this intimate act, even though it resulted in her becoming pregnant. And even as a result of being pregnant, she was refusing the marriage. She says, look, and take your child. I'll stay with my parents.
Yes.
You understand? So you've got that type. I suspect these are not typically rural folk. Right, maybe more from an urban setting, right? So you'd find there are those who, again, the age of social media has awakened, how can I say, over-sexualized our children, right? With these new types of ideologies that are being pumped into the social strata. Now you have a situation where children, I think it's something to be proud of, to have accomplished having had intercourse with the person that you like. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on it. I think there's a disconnect between our practices, traditional practices, as well as the law.
Ah, wonderful.
Yes.
Mouthful indeed. Okay, now, yes, you can.
I think I'll just add on to what has been said, and really coming from I think we all know policies are made by government, and we have our stakeholders, partners who help us. So we look at the international world. We've got what we call non-governmental organizations, who we are very familiar with, which also help the communities to be aware of where we are going wrong. Because yes, child marriages do affect children. We get children have dying mortality rates are things to consider. The child, when she's giving birth, she's not prepared for it. She's not prepared to be a mother. So non-governmental organizations have been allowed into our communities to bring about awarenesses. And this is where I'm going to answer you about the children, the education system, where you say maybe the education system is the one that's actually encouraging children to have sex at an early age. But when you look at what the education system is trying to do, is to try and bring a child to be aware of what child abuse is. So without these educational aspects that come in, the child does not know what is child abuse. The child does not know how to stop themselves from being abused, or how to, if, like you said, there's a child she's ready to engage in sexual activity, she enjoys it, but then government comes in again, people coming, the education system, non-governmental organization, all work together to bring about what do we do with this. We can't leave the children getting pregnant and all that. So they encourage the children to, I think we've noticed now to use condom because of HIV. We were losing a lot of children because of infections. So now they tell the children that, look, if you're going to engage in it, try and protect yourself. Because they realize that there's nothing stopping the children from having sex. It was now a big dilemma.
Thank you so much. It's indeed getting to be interesting. All right. So do you have anything to comment regarding your perspective regarding the case?
And a certain youngster, this Zim dance artist, once said, fight a controversy.
All right. On the issue of
on the issue of education and the issue of the early child marriages, because we are in between. Now we don't know whether it is for the world of the children's good that children continue being educated on there's a sexual reproductive health and the like. And whereas I'm forced again to think, how about those in marginalized areas? Some are not even being exposed to the technology and the like. But we continue seeing that the rate at which these children are getting into early child marriage is alarming. You know, it's reaching alarming levels. And still, my query is on the law and the perpetrators. Is the law being fair to the perpetrators? Because if it was, how then we continue seeing this the graph rising higher and higher like this?
Okay.
And once at the same time, I'd like to talk about she said she visited a shrine, and we are having some religions that still practice early child marriages.
Okay.
What is the law doing about them? Because we end up seeing the perpetrators walking scot-free, and we go and report it. See, the almost sitting us.
Still in the streets. Okay, wonderful. So kapeta controversy now. All right, no, that's fine. Thank you. We'll now take a short break and we'll bounce back as we look deeper into this topic that we have today. welcome back. Yeah, now let's move ahead with our topic. Yeah.
She had raised an interesting point with regards to perpetrators.
Okay.
Walking scot free. Being a lawyer, we have to be very specific about certain terms and things of that nature. When we say perpetrators, are we talking about child marriages or rape? People accused of rape itself, statutory rape, or any other form of rape. Which type of perpetrators were you referring to?
If I can say both.
Both.
Because right now we're talking about early child marriages, and at the same time, Mama results early child marriages. It is because of the victim who has been abused. So that I want from the video.
Yes.
They ended up getting married, but not because they were prepared for that.
Yeah. So in such situations, right, we must understand it's typically not something commonly known or accepted by the general public or laymen, as we would like to call it. When you're dealing with litigation or criminal prosecution of cases, every case is treated with its own merits. What I mean by that is that all the facts of that particular case will determine how that case is going to be adjudicated and how it's going to end. So which means you will find there is typically a standard that has to be followed when it comes to prosecuting a case, for example, either of child marriage or of rape, right? There are certain key legal aspects that must be fulfilled.
Okay.
For example, rape. We'll take rape for example. You have a situation where someone must have been forced with undue influence, either by threats of violence or anything of that nature. And the person must have been penetration, so on and so forth. And the person, of course, must have not given consent. Right? So all these aspects must then be weighed in. You will get situations, for example, I'm just giving an example so you understand how complex each of these cases may be. You will have a situation where, for example, a young lady goes out with a young man. Maybe they're not minors, they're adults. They go off, spend the night together. She ends up in his hotel room, right? And the next day she says, I was raped.
Okay.
And then people start to wonder, okay, what was happening? You spent the whole night together, everyone saw you all lovey-dovey, and then suddenly the next morning you're waking up accusing him of rape. Not to say it can't happen, but you find that there are a lot of then issues of evidence that must then be proven. Given that state, those circumstances, the burden of proof ends up being heavier on the person accusing.
Okay. All right. Zvaitika mutori kumahombwe kana kuti
Yeah, I think taitozvita like mukutamba izvokuti tingotambawo nekuzojairirawo tofunga ikandisikakanganisa iziti ndaira ne3 times.
Amai vari kuti makavabata kurwise maenda kunomwisa mvura mombe. Chii chakanatsoitika?
Ipapo ndopokana napo.
Okay.
Zvinhu izvi zvataita izvi taitozvita mukutowirirana.
Okay.
Tandotozvita like kutojairirana.
Okay.
Mukutowirirana watakazviita. Because kudai kuri kumubata, kudai akanomhangara ndakamubata.
Okay.
Chakamupota asanomhangara ndakamubata. Ndochondoziva kuti taiwirirana.
Okay. Ari kuti imimi makatomutyisidzira mukati mamatare vakati chii baba?
Vanokucheka nebanga.
Yekunzi ibange ike itori statement yakatoclaimwa, yakatogadzirwa kuda yakatogadzirwa nini because nyaya yakanga yatomboenda kumapurisa.
Okay.
Saka yanga statement yokutsvaga kunyudza ine.
Okay.
Nekuti pakabuda nyaya iyi ndakanga ndakapokana nayo.
Because of the fact that they have to establish that, okay, why are you then saying, after all this interesting evening, seems like you were into it, and then suddenly the next morning you're accusing him of rape. Prove it. I will not necessarily prove it, because the issue then is to say, okay, establish the facts.
Okay.
All right. And then it becomes very difficult if there's no other witness to the offense. And yet it could have been a situation where maybe it was their first time out.
Okay.
He had tried to engage with her and she had said, no, not yet. And he forced himself. So that's very possible. Or there are situations where sometimes the person making the accusation decided to maybe she regretted the experience and didn't like it.
All right.
Or maybe someone discovered about the incident, decided to accuse him of rape. She didn't do it willingly. There are many reasons, right? So you have a situation where that evidence now has to be presented to court for the court to make a sound decision without putting an innocent person behind bars and without letting a perpetrator go scot-free.
Okay.
So you find in a situation like that, for example, where the evidence is 50-50, this person is arrested, taken to court, and then there's typically what's called a bail application. This person says, okay, listen, I'm not going to go anyway. I'm being accused of this. I'm pleading not guilty. I will come whenever summoned. And the court says, no, he's not a flight risk. He surrendered himself to the police when they asked for him. And he presented himself with court. What will the court typically do? There's no need to detain you. We'll call you back to court for processing. So you then find this person out in the streets or at the shops or in the neighborhood after he had been arrested, and it shocks you to think, oh, maybe the case has been done away with. But that's not actually the case.
Okay.
There are many things that are involved in the adjudication of a matter of this nature. So each case depends on its facts. So some cases the evidence is quite poor, or the witness, who is the only witness to the offense, is not a good witness. Maybe they've been caught lying about something else. So the court will not trust their evidence.
Okay, wonderful. But coming back to the issue of child marriages, what has been done so far to really address that issue?
I think
to rehabilitate, to remedy, this as a problem.
Yes, so we have two terms that are there in the Children's Act, Chapter 506, which is children in conflict with the law and children in contact with the law. So what the government of Zimbabwe had in place was to have what we call training institutes, and we also have places of safety or shelters that are there for children. So what has been happening is those who had been offended are being taken to some of those places so that they can be provided with counseling, they can be provided with therapy that helps them recover from the challenges that they will be facing. And those that would have committed the crimes would be taken to training institutes if they are young, so that they can also reform and change. We have also seen policy and changes that is aimed at legislature, where we also saw the change in terms of the Marriages Act. I think it now has a position of clarity. We also saw the Constitutional Court judgment that they also brought up. And we've also seen some changes coming there where we also try to address that issue, because the Children's Act says anyone below the age of 16, which left those who are 17 and 18 exposed. Yet the Constitution was also saying below the age of 18. So we are now seeing that was addressed, and we appreciate that, because it's something that has protected a certain space of children. And we've also seen quite a number of awareness campaigns being done to educate young people and also to educate the parents, where we are also seeing positive parenting sessions or positive parenting trainings being done. I was happy when there was the issue of the education sector being raised. It's important for them to learn about that so that they know what abuse is and they know how to protect themselves. And the education system is coming to cover a gap or to cover a weakness that was being shown on the part of the parents. You know, in Zimbabwe, we believe that it's a taboo to sit down and talk with your child, even about a relationship. I remember the first time that I talked with my parents that I have a girlfriend was after I finished my first degree. And it was because I was scared to talk with them about that. And that leaves you exposed, because your parents would have had sex before and they got pregnant. So if you sit down with them, they will tell you if you have sex unprotected, you'll obviously get pregnant. But these are the things that you can use to address or to stop getting into something that you are not prepared for.
Okay.
Kuda kwe situation.
Alright.
Not hatoma wana. Ngambojera kuti ngogara pamba pabereki unongoanzwa kwena roja. Nyozo zote ndoma wana.
Wangatoma wana.
Nyayo yokuti ayo nyika inenge yakaoma.
Okay.
Asine pfungwa dzevanotemu matongoziva kuti kutongonzwa rora kune 20 wakwenda unoroja.
Okay.
Kuti patori nemwe nguva yekuti unofanira kuti uchitogara pamba pabereki wako. asi isusu anotema nenyika augari adziti tingoona kuti asi chazinenge tori mawani.
Alright. Unenge wakutozvionera sababa.
Unenge wakutoona future yemangwana chaiyo nhasi asati atopera.
Okay.
So you can see that in as much as there are quite a number of things that are being done, we are also facing quite a number of challenges because of some forces that are beyond our control. Much has been tried, but
Okay. Meaning to say there is no solution
quite
to it.
Complex.
All right. Okay. That's a very good. That's a valid point. So are we saying that educating these little ones regarding the issues to do with the sexuality and so forth is indeed bringing something good?
When it comes to the education system, I believe there's certain types of information that are necessary. For example, the risk of disease, right? If you look at the HIV/AIDS campaign that came out when HIV, the spreading of HIV was quite a big, it was a massive campaign. In schools, I think there were literally NGOs that used to come periodically to schools and do little workshops or seminars on STDs and HIV and pregnancy. And there was a very, very aggressive, well-funded, very aggressive approach.
Okay.
I think that's what this would require if you're going to address it. And if you look at it, young kids from high school were fearful. I mean, I was in high school, and you'd go to one of these, talks, and you'd come out there and you'd be like, oh my God, I didn't know, such things could happen. You become immediately scared. Of course, it doesn't stop everyone.
Okay.
Right? But you find that even amongst ourselves as young boys, we used to say, okay, how does a condom work? What does it look like? That discussion had it's not necessarily that you'd want to act on the information you had, but you realize that if I'm going to do it, I have to be careful.
All right.
You understand? There's an issue where the introduction of the right information is necessary. Not necessarily that, okay, this is how sex works. No.
Okay.
That's different too.
Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, maybe coming back to you, say, okay.
So there is something that I also wanted us to understand that one of the major contributing factor towards exposing children to such has also been the living arrangements of quite a number of families.
Okay.
There is a very sad case that I had where children and their parents were staying in one room, and the parents used to have sex, and the children used to hear the sounds, used to hear all those things happening, and that enlightened them towards something, and they ended up having sexual intercourse. The children were listening to that.
Baba pamakachika bota. Ndo pamakachikeka kamakachika. Okay. All right. Kokuzochikira mune vanhu zvaifambisa.
Nyekuti usaziwo chikumbokuone chose kwezi pamacho munisiko wacho gogo wacho iye nini saka wakaitoshiya lafi yawo siku na gogo wacho iniwe kuti anoshiya lafi ndezvaitisa
usiku rwaitodya wabota imomo
ndizozvitoreva
mama ndizvo here.
Yeah, I think.
So you can just get one room, right? You mean we pass it by then?
Yeah, for me to spoil it.
Oh, so everybody is going to my time, which is all right. All right. What's the Papa want to do no more for people?
Don't do my trail, but in that, just don't plan.
All right. For my dad,
anditomboziva kuti chichaitika ndikazongoona wezvacho
kana kakazvironga
napo pasina.
Okay, koyo vana vasekuru vasangoronga
avosi vanhu vari mumba mavo maybe ndozvavaida.
So we are actually seeing that, the element of poverty is also making these things worse, exposing children more than they've been exposed, even in the education system. Because when the education system is delivering messages to young people, it delivers in a way that they may learn and not that they may do something, those kind of maladaptive behaviors and other things. So in as much as we say they've been exposed through being educated about that, we should take note of the fact that it's not the education that is pushing them towards that. There are other factors that are affecting the education that is so good, which includes, some children coming from other backgrounds where they've been exposed to such things. We are also seeing the parenting style, poverty, like I was saying, and we've also seen even sexual exploitation as a result of economic difficulties, where we have young people who are now being sexually abused as a way of survival. They are being manipulated, trying to survive by adults. So I think we need to spare the education system and focus on the major factors, because it's trying to educate them. I've been privileged to be part of the PA educators when I was still at school. What we used to educate others, or what we used to be trained on, are the issues to do with STIs, pregnancy, the issue to, all those things are surrounding the issue of negative consequences of having sexual intercourses at a certain age. So I think that needs to be brought out to the open.
Okay, wonderful. I think now we may also want to look at the consequences of these early marriages and how to remedy them. Maybe can you give some comments regarding?
Well, we all know that the consequences are poverty. The child is going to have a life that's going to be difficult. They're unprepared for family system. We look at the abuse that's happening to a child, a girl child. Even the abuse for the young man. He knows that this girl is my girl, I love her, and we're going to have a child. But the pressure from the family, from maybe the parents, and they're thinking, now I've got another mouth to feed. That is what brings a lot of pressure. We look at also health-wise, there's cancer, there's sexual diseases. There's a lot of things that we can look at that are happening, that happen, which are not something we can cover in one day. When we say what are the remedies, there's a lot of mitigation that is continuous with the policies in Zimbabwe itself. I won't talk about other countries, but I'll talk about Zimbabwe. It's a continuous mitigation where we are trying to respond to what is happening, and we are trying to recover whatever's been lost and maybe help the girl child. And then we hear that now suddenly we realize that there's an imbalance, and advocates for child rights will say, now you have left the boy child. He's now not, like you said, you go for the boy child because he's not being protected. His rights is the one but it's because there's been an imbalance. We were focusing on the girl child. But when we look at the population of how has it improved really, yes, when we are talking, yes, the girl child seems to be doing much better. But when you go down to grassroots again, you notice the girl child is the one that's being pulled out of school. And going through communities, you realize that really we are trying to do something, and it's going to be a continued. Maybe in 20 years' time, we'll have a better
result. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. You have something to say, comment on that?
This challenge, I believe it needs to be addressed on 2 points, where we are changing the dynamics of parenting. We are addressing those negative parenting attitudes, replacing them with positive parenting attitude. To say, if a child has done this, they need our support, they need to be taken care of, and they need to be mentored to such an extent where they know what they are doing. The most unfortunate part about our society is it focuses more on preparing a girl child to be a mother, but does less in preparing a boy child to be a father. Because you are expected to learn to be a father from the hardships of life, to be said, Muruma Jamie, this and that. But then when you reach to a point where you are facing that challenge, where you are expected to take care of a family, but you are young, you don't have anywhere to go. But if you have mentorship, if you have positive parenting, to say the parent will take care of you and the wife in courts and the child until you have reached a certain point where you can take care of yourself, I believe that's something that can be helpful. The second point is actually addressing it on a more holistic approach to look at the community. The reason why they will chase you away from home is because they will be saying, kwamugabe kune mwana akamitiswa or akamitisa, and it becomes quite challenging for them to move around because they will be expecting to have children who get married, who gets a white wedding, although it's a foreign concept. You know, in our society, this has become a yardstick or a threshold to measure achievement or success of parenting skills, to say, mwana akachata, these parents have done well, mwana akamitiswa, they failed. So this is something that we need to change in terms of the perceptions, where we are going to provide awareness, where we are going to train parents to be proper parents and not parents who are detected on how to be a parent by the community. We also need even to continuously educate the young people to say, these are the consequences. I was raised in a Christian family, it says, spare the rod, spoil the child. But this is something that we have been trying to address with positive parenting skills, where we are encouraging conversations between parents and their children to make sure that there is a healthy relationship that allows them to discuss something. Because someone may fail to go and get attention of an STI because I don't know how to tell my parents there is something that is happening on my, because they've already set a tone that we can't talk of those things. So you can actually see a child are dying because they failed to have medical attention because they don't know how to approach their parents.
All right, wonderful. I think before we move in further, let's just take a short break and then we'll bounce back as we look deeper into this topic of today.
I'm Janet Manyoa. I buy my groceries and hardware from the Gateway Stream online platform. On a busy day, I can also order my meals on the platform. I also book all my family holidays and leisure activities on the app. With my busy schedule, buying on the Gateway Stream platform takes away the hassle of getting into shops, queuing, and having to look for those hard-to-find items. The best part is everything gets delivered at my home. Gateway Stream is a one-stop shop where you can shop from anywhere in the world and get your orders delivered anywhere in Zimbabwe.
This is it. Gateway Stream. The future is here now.
Welcome back. I think a lot of ideas and information has been related, and those who have got ears to hear, let them hear. So as we move further with this topic, maybe coming to you, say, you had something to add on?
Yes, I just wanted to add to my brother's comments there. There's a saying that the best achievement as a parent you can make is to prepare your children for when you're not there.
Okay.
Right. So I think we need to create a situation where we have a good marriage of Western approaches with our traditional values. Now, what I mean by that is to take the Western approach of lobbying with government and parliament, right, with pushing our values and norms into schools and so on and so forth, through that kind of advocacy. Very well funded, very aggressive marketing to say, as Zimbabweans, we believe this. I've noticed in children's curriculum when they're learning about social studies and they're learning about traditional practices, they learn about the rain dance, what to call certain festivals, things like that, but nothing about our morals and values when it comes to marriage, when it comes to raising a family, when it comes to responsibilities of men and women in a household. Nothing like that.
How are we going to actually alleviate that?
Which is where I believe that, I don't know if it's controversial to say, but we have a lot of NGOs, non-governmental organizations that are formed, and they want to say, okay, we help, child-minded families or child-headed families, or we help widows and so on and so forth. Why don't we have NGOs that are locally originated, that push, that counter these other morals, views and practices, to say, listen, if we're going to encourage our children to stay in school for as long as possible, we need to inculcate this thinking even at school level. So I think there needs to be more kind of civil society that's involved in pushing social values and norms that are more traditional to us. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So maybe looking at where we are now, do you think that the law should be amended to accommodate our traditional values and beliefs, whereby 13, 14 years old can be accommodated into a marriage or allowed to get into a marriage? What do you think about that opinion? People really
Not
adjusting.
to that extent. We cannot amend the law to that extent that we allow the 14 years, 13 years, 15, 16 to get married. But it is us who should be forced to adjust.
Wow. Okay, maybe let me come to you, ma'am.
Right now, I'm a bit in a sort of dilemma of, is it okay? The law saying you cannot, a girl under 17 cannot get married, or 18 cannot get married, but then you are burdening the other family where they are forced to look after the child, and the child also becomes homeless. The parents are no longer able to look after their child, and then dynamics change completely. Whereas the boy child now is looking at the other parents and saying, okay, that's your problem. The law is protecting us. But who's protecting that family with the child that is underage who has the baby to look after? So, yeah, I think it used to work somehow, but I don't know how.
Okay, that's now we're getting into the heart of the case. Maybe I come to you before I come to you. We now have got let me say, a discrepancy between what the law is saying and our general norms and values as a society. How do you maybe see it if the law is to be changed or to be amended so that it can accommodate the normal behaviors that are currently on the ground, so that there's maybe a relationship between what the law is trying to advocate and what is on the ground? What do you think about that?
It's still tricky. I feel like it's still tricky because telling a 13, 14, 15-year-old that they can get married, like what she mentioned, you will now be burdening the other side of the family that will be forced to not take care of the child. So I'm still stuck on that one.
On that one,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine. Coming over to you, say what do you have to say?
Yes. So on a personal level.
On a point of what? Okay.
Point of what?
Okay. All right. Okay.
Okay. So
Yeah.
on a like not speaking as a professional.
Okay.
Per se.
Yes.
I always say that the status quo is to be maintained when it's beneficial to the people that it's covering. What it means is culture, if it has to be preserved, there has to be a benefit that is being received by the people who are preserving the culture. So now we are trying to accommodate something that poses a danger to our children in the laws. I believe we cannot do that. So now we cannot address that in the laws, but it's something that we then have to look at when it has happened to say this is something that has happened, not to formalize it. Because once we have formalized it, we are going to give passport to those who are doing harmful social cultural practices to say you can marry these 13-year-olds freely. So it's not something that we need to say, let's adjust to suit our tradition, but we have to take care of the children.
Maybe just to stop you there, can we not say that we have historically accepted that idea, of allowing these kids to get into early marriages? Because look, the statistics I've given, have said 30%.
Yes.
They are already into it, despite the fact that a lot is being done, advocated around the world, the laws and everything. But look at maybe the behaviors that are being reflected currently. These kids are eating porridge, they're eating water, regardless of what you're trying to educate them. They're still in it. From tender ages, they're indulging into sexual intercourse. Don't you think that don't you see that maybe probably there could be really something that's really not telling regarding this issue of age, issue of marriage?
So I always say we cannot normalize an abnormality because it has become popular.
Okay, maybe to stop you there. The question of normal and abnormal.
Yes.
Who is there to define for us?
Yeah.
Who is there to define for us?
So culture and practices are socially constructed.
Yes, yes.
So what the society is subscribing to,
Okay.
that is what becomes the norm.
Okay.
So if we have both agreed, because we agreed, the Constitution of Zimbabwe, the one that we are currently using, I believe everyone was consulted somehow. And we all agreed that a child is anyone below the age of 18. So I believe that the law saying anyone below the age of 18 cannot be married has actually reduced the number.
Okay, coming to you. Say.
We, whether we like it or not, we're living in a world with two faces here, right? In Zimbabwe, we are practicing Western lifestyles, political systems, economic systems as well. And then in some aspects, we adopt some traditional practices like Rora and so on and so forth. So we're mixing the two already. So what I'm saying is that why don't we take this step further? Take the good parts, the parts that we enjoy, we are unified with, that we love. Rora is an example, right? And then we take our values and morals and principles to say that, this goes to the positive parenting model that you're talking about. Listen, that becomes your wife. And you have to be financially and economically prepared for that responsibility. Right now, you know you're not. So finish school before you indulge in such. So,
thank you so much for that contribution.
Yeah,
okay, over to you, ma'am. Okay.
I'm waiting to ask this question. The child being in a foreign home, in the mother's home, she will be always treated as a foreigner. And is child rights still happening there? Or have we allowed for more abuse for that child?
No, in fact, or maybe we might have missed each other. My suggestion was with the marrying of the two approaches. Charles was, let's say the girl child is my child and she gets impregnated. I'm not saying I end, to the young father's home. She will stay in my home until she's finished her schooling and I've educated her fully. But what you're saying to those two is that there's going to be a pre-roller discussion. With you know what, you are promised to each other, right? But you can't marry because that's not legal. And also that's not what we want for you. You're going to finish your school, right? You've got a child, so both of you prepare for your family that you're eventually going to come together and create. So that's what I'm saying, that if you let the child go into that home, you're basically creating more mischief. And what we're trying to prevent is we're essentially creating. But you're just enforcing traditional values to say, if you impregnate that child, she's your wife to be, if I can use those words.
Okay.
Yeah. So also, I am happy you are here, the lawyer. I think the issue also getting it from the Marriages Act says anyone who supports that whole contract of having a child being taken to another family, you have also committed a crime. So if you are to say, like, my child, I'm now taking you there, you are also committing something that also needs to be addressed. So I think that whole model of saying, I'll take care of you until you have reached an age of marriage, I think it can be a good way to deal with the issue.
The question, we come back to the question again that was asked to say, have we as a society in Zimbabwe bitten more than our share by raising it up to 18 years is the age of consent?
No, I don't think we have. I think, if anything, you've got to create a standard you aspire to.
Yeah.
Do you see? So I don't think lowering it or keeping it low would do any service to the problem. The issue is that you set a target and say that's what we aspire to, and we find a way to scramble our way up.
Okay, that's fine. So now let me move over to you, ma'am. Your last remarks regarding this issue. Are you agreeing that we have to balance the two, or you have other opinions?
Yes, I'm definitely agreeing to balancing between the two, because kids of today are obviously going to say, we're not doing what you, mom and daddy used to do. We're our own generation now. So I agree to balance between the two.
Okay, that's wonderful. Over to you, ma'am.
I think I'm going to stay with the try and balance everything. because we are looking more of, there's a lot of aspects to look at. There's the children that are both underage. There's the child who is abused. That's what we call statutory rape. There's the community itself, like we talked about religion. What has been done to bring awarenesses of how it's affecting that community? Do they know what the side effects, the pros and cons of what's good and what's bad? So I think yes, community resilience by bringing people together, doing awareness programs, such. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, let me come to you, sir. Then I'll end with our lawyer. Yes.
Okay, thank you. What I would like to say is I would like to urge Zimbabwe and the world at large to adopt a proactive approach to addressing this issue and not to only act when there is a problem, because this is how we have perpetuated a lot of things that are affecting people in our communities. But I would also like to say that let's also try to find ways so that we can address the root causes of the problem, because there are quite a number of challenges that are coming from the culture, the religion, the economy, and also political influence. And we are also seeing how the society is decaying in terms of its values, its norms, and other things. So these are things that we need to go back to the drawing board and see what is causing it and how can we address it before it continues being a challenge. And like what they always say, umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu, a person is a person because of the people. We need to go back to that aspect of being there for each other. There are many children there without parents that also require the ideas and the guidance of the other senior person in that community. So let's take care of one another. And also, as an old person or a mature person, you also need to look at the next person, the child, as your child or as a fellow human being, and to say, if someone was going to do this sort of abuse to me, how was I going to feel? So that sort of humanity that is dying away is something that we also need to find ways to cultivate it back so that we can also address abuse for the long term.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, sir. Coming to you, sir, your final remarks. Yeah.
What I would like to leave saying is that we live in a very complicated world now. The modern age is called the information age. That's what we call it, which means children and adults, they're exposed to tons of information without a filter, unfortunately. Now, the problem with that is you're going to create a lot of mental issues with kids being bombarded with oversensory of information, that they don't know what to do with this information that they're being processed. So the most important thing is that parents need to be vigilant. The style of parenting has to be very, very dynamic. It has to be adapting constantly. There's no book you could read that talks about how to parent and manage these issues that are all children related, right? Which means that at the end of the day, do not forego your right as a parent to the state. It is not the job of the state to parent for you, but if you surrender that right by letting the problems fester, the state will take over that right. It is not up to the school to teach your children manners or good morals. That comes from home. So if that is not what you're training your children at home, you cannot then expect the law to somehow come in and fix your problem. And yet the truth is, it starts at home. I think that would be my part.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much all for sparing the time to come and be with us. We appreciate your contributions. They were indeed constructive, and a lot I think are going to learn from what you contributed. And it will be our pleasure to that you take it on the platform so that we can look further into other things that are very important for DNA shows. All right, thank you so much. So now we've come to the end of the show, not the case in question, of course. So yeah, indeed, a lot has been presented. Sentiments, notions, and ideas has been highlighted. So it's now up to you to take and maybe employ this in your routine, day-to-day lives, so that these kids can be well reared, so that the upbringing of these kids has got to be properly done. And we will bring more issues, more topics, more themes from our DNA show that we're going to explore on this same platform. So you stay tuned. This is Tinashe Mugabe, the DNA Man, signing out.